started to listen to all of these women confide in me how they struggled with this, or nobody knows but my husband, or my husband doesn't even know that I feel this way, I was like, how many women are suffering like
I
this?
didn't want anybody to know that you went to therapy. I was like, no, it's just one time. Somebody recommended to her. It's the doctors making her go. It's a point of shame because of the weakness associated with it.
Could you come sit with me? Sometimes I had to have people sit with me on days where I felt like I wanted to kill myself. I would call someone, a friend. I had my dear friend. She came and she sat with me often, or my aunt.
You are the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Was that there were so many women, and they happened to all be young moms,
Yep.
who were struggling with depression. And I remember someone bringing me coffee, and it was so sweet. And I was sharing with her what I was struggling with. And I remember her leaning over, and we were the only two in the house with the little kids. But I remember her leaning over and being like, "You struggle with this too?" And she was talking about this feeling of shame and how she didn't think she could tell someone what she was struggling with. Now, some of that...
Why do you... Yeah, you're about to say why?
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Some of that went with being a Christian.
Oh,
This idea that if we have Jesus...
You don't have the joy of the Lord.
You don't have the joy of the Lord.
Yeah.
Or you should just be content.
Be
Or
content. It's a lack of contentment. It's a sin.
Yeah, possibly. Right? Or if you read your Bible more, if you pray more, then you shouldn't have. Or if you just love Jesus more, then you shouldn't have any
mental illness,
feelings
right?
of depression.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that plays a lot into why young Christian women, older Christian women, Christian men, boys in general struggle with saying, "Hey, I'm feeling depressed."
Which is interesting because you see it in the Bible. Like, I mean, you see Elijah after he goes through his ministry and it didn't work out. Like, he's like, "God, I did exactly what you said. The fire came down from heaven. Didn't really turn anything. People still want to kill me." And he goes out into the desert and is just like, "All right, Lord, take my life. Clearly, I'm a failure. I've done nothing good." And the angel comes and comforts him, right? Yeah. Doesn't rebuke him, comforts him, and then gives him the encouragement of, "I'm going to give you exactly what you need. There's hope here. And go ahead, get your face wiped up. There's hope. Go find Elisha. He's going to help you. He's going to continue this mission. There's people here who love me. Your work there's still hope in your work." So it's interesting to think that that depression would be thought of as a sin when even in the Bible, Elijah encounters it and isn't rebuked for it.
God has compassion. And I think we forget that God can look at us in our dark state, in our state of sorrow, and be grieved for us. He's not over here being like, "Erica Schwartz, if you just had more faith, if you just, read my Bible more and believed my promises to you, you would feel a lot better." Yeah. He's not shaking his finger. He's collecting our tears in jars. He's holding us. He wants to comfort us. He grieves that our hearts are broken and sad. And so
that's one area is if you're a Christian specifically and you're feeling like, "Oh, I can't be depressed because that's actually a sign that I don't love God enough." What you're saying is don't believe that. That's a lie.
That's a lie the enemy wants to use.
Yeah.
And here's the thing that I learned. As I started to listen to all of these women confide in me how they struggled with this, or nobody knows but my husband, or my husband doesn't even know that I feel this way, I was like, how many women are suffering like this in silence? And realizing that the enemy was keeping all of us women stuck in this feeling of aloneness and using depression, using this shame or just this idea of I gotta be private, I gotta carry this alone to keep this dark cloud looming over our heads or inside our spirits. A lot. There was a
Right.
significant amount of women. And so I think that's, I'd like to just point that out, that the Satan is a liar. And the other thing I would like to say is I remember going to therapy, which that took me a long time to get to.
Yeah.
Because why do I need therapy if I have the Bible?
That's a point of shame too.
Yeah.
I mean, especially I know for me personally, I remember I didn't even want anybody to know that you went to therapy. I was like, no, it's just one time, somebody recommended to her, it's the doctors making her go. It's a point of shame because of the weakness associated with.
But there is a stigma about therapy, and goodness, I wish everybody could go to therapy, whether you have a mind wellness issue or not. I wish
And
everybody
I'll
could go.
share with husbands because I went to the therapy appointments not as a patient, but to understand what my wife in. And I found so much value in being able to go in and hear what was going on in your mind.
Because at first you'd be like, we weren't covered by insurance. So you'd be like, why are we paying that's like, but then
$80 to $100
Yeah.
a session, whatever it
But
was.
he came the second time and he was like, that's the best $80 that
Seriously, it was
spent.
so useful.
Yeah.
And and learning
Yes.
why, because I was like, what the heck's going on with my wife? Where did she go?
Yeah.
This is not who you were. This is not who I married. I don't know who this woman is.
Right.
you were so, it was so different.
It was different.
And getting to uncover it. And I would have not been able to uncover it had I stayed in that thought process about therapy.
But can I just say something? You talked about as a husband, you were like, what happened to her? That's not who I married. Husbands, this is a plea. Do not forsake your wife when she no longer seems like herself. She's scared. She's so
Your-
unsure of who
Your
she is.
covenant is bigger than your context.
Yes.
You made a promise. That's something I've gone back to because we've had a lot of hard times. And something I keep going back to is I made a promise. I made a covenant that I would be here by your side regardless of the things that happen.
Yes.
And so your covenant that you made with your wife is bigger than your context.
Another thing I would say is in therapy, I had one of my therapists say to me, did you ever think, had you just taken the medication the doctors wanted you to take, that this journey could have been maybe months or a year versus 5 or 6 years later?
Yeah. It was a long time.
It was a long time. And I was like, you know what? I never thought that because I felt like I wanted to prove that I was stronger
Right.
than the medication.
Yeah.
Or there's a stigma that if
Yeah.
you take medication, you're weak or you're gonna become a zombie. But this idea of that I could have just taken medication and this could have just been over in months versus losing years of my life
Yeah.
was bewildering to me.
Right. Because there is something about medication too that makes people say, oh, no, I don't need medication. There's a fear around it.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
some of it, yeah. And some of it, it's like the doctors literally have something that could help you be
Yes.
done
Yes.
with whatever you're feeling
Yes.
and heal your mind faster.
Jesus plus medication can equal healing and the best kind. And I think if I could just package this bow up, I want people to know that part of healing is not being silent about your suffering. I started to realize that all of these women were suffering in silence, and I was like, that's how Satan's using it to keep you stuck. So I just started talking to anybody about depression. and opening up about what I was struggling with. And that let people feel like they could open up and that they could share. And so I think if you're willing to share your story, if you're willing to just say to someone, "Hey, I'm suffering. Hey, I'm having a really bad day today. Hey, don't don't leave me alone today. Could you come sit with me?" Sometimes I had to have people sit with me on days where I felt like I wanted to kill myself. I would call someone, a friend. I had my dear friend, she came and she sat with me often, or my aunt, or whatever. I would spend a lot of time with my dad before he passed. And that was so that I wasn't alone with my thoughts.
Well, and as the Bible says, if you're in the dark, and that's what silence is. It's a way to keep you in the dark, keep your thoughts in the dark. And when it's in the dark, it grows. But what happens if you bring the light in, if you start sharing and bringing community around you and bringing truth around you? Because the other thing is when you're in your own mind, oftentimes you're not even thinking in line with
Yes.
what's true and good. And so bring the light in and allow it to heal you.
Yes. And that's that big, like, though I don't want to slap a band aid on it and say, just give yourself more Jesus, right? It's so important to know that giving yourself Jesus
Yeah.
is a huge part of how you overcome the darkness that is depression. To realize that there is a marvelous light that he can bring you into, to realize that he loves you, to realize that he's never going to leave you or abandon you, that all these fears that you have, you can lay at the feet of Jesus, that he came and he died on the cross, that he already died for all of these horrible things that you're wrestling against, and that there is freedom in that. When my mind realized that he actually already freed me, that's when I started to be able to climb toward the light.
Yeah. And I think we'll continue to share more about this. But those are just a few things that we know that when we walked through it, there was shame around some pieces of depression. And so if you have some shame around those things, it was just meant to, this is just meant to encourage you in it. And so, as always, if you find value here, if you want us to keep on talking about this, please please subscribe, please drop a comment too. If you've battled through this and there's something that you think could be helpful to somebody who's also walking through depression, leave a comment, leave some hope. We want as much hope as we can get. So till next time, thank you.